everyone. Toronto's floods aren't rare anymore and the bills are big. Over the past 2 decades, storms that were considered once in a generation are now arriving every few years. Streets close, basements fill, and insurers pay out hundreds of millions of dollars, costs that ultimately flow back to homeowners, businesses, and taxpayers. The July 2024 storm alone caused nearly $1 billion in insured losses across Toronto and southern Ontario. And this isn't just about water in the streets. Flooding damages infrastructure, disrupts transit, drives up insurance premiums, and can shut down businesses for weeks. In a city that's growing denser, with more hard surfaces and more people depending on critical services, these impacts ripple quickly through the economy. In today's talk, we have four experts with us to share their perspectives on how we can get ahead of this challenge, what's changing in our storm patterns, which solutions have already been proven to work here, and the practical steps to finance and implement them at scale. Today, we have with us Sebastian Mercado, a climate scientist, Brian Hussey, green infrastructure engineer, Darren Yu, sustainable finance lead in the Flood and Water Resilience Fund, and Samuel Khalifa, green infrastructure governance consultant. I am Angela Chua, and I will be your moderator today. We'll keep this simple. First, what is the real risk today? Second, what actually works in a cold city like ours? And third, how do we pay for it and get it built? Let's start with the risks. Sebastian, can you walk us through why our old design storm mindset no longer fits what's happening on the ground?
Yes, of course, Angela. You summarized it perfectly. We are seeing more rainstorms. So over the last 2 decades, these storms have become shorter, sharper, and much more expensive. This is due because of higher temperatures leads to higher moisture, creating a perfect scenario for short, intense rainfall that, for example, in southern Ontario, these were supposed to happen once every 20 years, but we already see happening 3 times in the last 20 years. And we will keep increasing that frequency and severity. And the Toronto drainage system is not designed for this rainfall pattern. So as you mentioned, in 2024, we had one of the worst in history, but also we started having in 2005, where 150 millimeters of rain fell in just a couple of hours. 2013 happened again with 126 millimeters in just 90 minutes. And last, as you mentioned, in 2024, we had around 100 millimeters in 3 hours with the $1 billion cost for insurance. So in each case, as you mentioned, we see the pipe and the storage tunnels overwhelmed, infrastructure damage, families affected. And this is not just an inconvenience, this is a systemic risk. We have data from the Financial Accountability Office where it says that this climate-related extreme rainfall will add about $700 million per year to infrastructure costs only in Ontario by 2030, as much as $145 billion by the end of the century if we do not take any action. So these heavier bursts of rain and more frequent flash flooding, especially in our denser neighborhoods, we have a clear takeaway that these drains and tunnels cannot keep up, and we need to keep water where it falls through surface retention and many other solutions that I'm sure we're going to hear from. But yeah, this is the current state.
Thank you, Sebastian. So the problem today seems clear: more water, faster. Ryan, if the pipes alone aren't enough, what practical tools can soak and slow water right where it falls?
So just to give a bit of an analogy, what I usually explain to my clients is that you want to think of turning your infrastructure into a large sponge, so that way you can soak in the water, slow it down, and then potentially store it and potentially reuse it. So there are several tools at our disposal to do this. We can look at permeable pavements that will let the rain pass into a gravel base instead of just rushing into the gutter. You can use rain gardens and bioswales to slow and filter the street runoff. Green roofs are great at absorbing water and releasing it slowly, and urban wetlands and stormwater ponds are able to store peak rainflows. And then we can, of course, use cisterns to capture this rainwater for non-potable use. such as irrigation, cooling, and even toilet flushing in some of the municipal and commercial buildings within the city. So there are some local studies that show that a properly sized bioretention system in the GTA can cut peak flows down by 40 to 60%. And then this can treat the highly polluted runoff, turning a hazard into a potential resource by improving water quality before reuse. Permeable pavements also can eliminate most of our surface runoff from light and moderate rainstorms when they're maintained. And Toronto's own green roof bylaw, which has been in place since 2009, has institutionalized retention at the building scale. So once we've handled this rainwater, we can use cisterns and stormwater ponds that would be added to the city to allow any stormwater to be tapped into during dry periods and reduce the demand on our municipal supply systems, increasing resilience against heat waves like the ones we've been going through this summer, and then even future droughts. But then the question is, how do we maintain these in cold climates? The main way will be using a deeper aggregate below the frost line and using salt-tolerant native species and underdrains. But this has been done in cities like Vancouver, Philadelphia, and Copenhagen, which have all successfully scaled up their green infrastructure despite being in climates that get winter. So by scaling the green infrastructure across Toronto, it allows us to benefit from several cumulative impacts that will multiply. And by strategically sitting rain gardens, bioswales, and permeable pavements in high-risk neighborhoods, the city can reduce localized flooding while also creating connected green corridors that will improve the walkability of and community of our city spaces. And then the reuse systems such as cisterns and stormwater ponds can be designed to integrate with parks and recreational areas, providing both functional water storage and aesthetic and even recreational value. So these aren't just pretty add-ons for the city. They're proven and functional systems that can take the pressure off our pipes, improve our water quality, and cool our neighborhoods by mitigating the heat island effect.
Appreciate, Brian, your insights on these solutions. Now, Darren, given those, how do we pay for said solutions in a way that makes sense for taxpayers and investors?
Yeah, so first of all, thank you so much, Angela, for the opportunity and the opportunity to be here. So it's important to note that Toronto has laid important groundwork for a resilient stormwater system. We have strong infrastructure standards, incentive programs for homeowners, and a green streets program that brings trees, bioswales, and permeable surfaces into roadways. And we also have the green roof bylaw, which has been a success story for over a decade. But despite that, the scale of work still lags behind the scale of risk. And we have a backlog of unfunded projects from dozens of environmental assessments. And the financing tools that we've relied on don't link capital directly to performance. So I think the main question is, how can we launch an initial pilot investment program that delivers measurable results and sets the stage for a much larger funding round in the future? So our team has recommended establishing a flood and water resilience fund that issues two types of bonds, right? First, we'll issue green bonds, where every dollar is tied to pre-approved green infrastructure or water reuse projects with transparent tracking and reporting. And secondly, we'll issue sustainability-linked bonds, where the interest rate changes based on results. So more retention capacity, fewer flood claims, and cleaner water. And if these targets are missed, the coupon rate would step up automatically. So this blended model will attract a broader pool of investors, embedding accountability and encouraging continuous improvement. So for a starting scale, we propose an initial $2 billion pilot bond program over the next 10 years. Now, it's important to note that this wouldn't be the final build out, but rather the first tranche, focused on high impact demonstration projects across the city. We feel like with $2 billion, we can implement solutions such as blue-green streets, flood-proof critical transit hubs, retrofitting municipal roofs with vegetation, installing rainwater harvesting systems, and for instance, creating stormwater parks and wetlands. And these projects would be strategically located in the most flood-prone zones, such as the downtown core, providing visible benefits and hard performance data to justify future expansion. So you might be asking, where does the money come from? Well, to start, we'll have an initial base allocation from Toronto Water. We'll also have a phased-in non-residential stormwater fee with credits for properties that would build their own green infrastructure, and partnerships with insurers who have a direct financial interest in reducing these claims. We've done the calculations, and and even with conservative benefits model, a pilot project of this scale could reduce annual flood damages by roughly 8 to 10% in targeted areas, while generating an additional 2 to 3% improvement in urban cooling and local property values. These percentages were also based on observed results from comparable programs in other cities like Copenhagen and Philadelphia, and they would be tracked through rigorous monitoring and public reporting. And I want to really emphasize that the key isn't just about funding construction, it's about reinvesting in the city of Toronto in a sustainable manner. So just to conclude, by starting with a $2 billion pilot program, we build a measurable track record, right? We're showing investors and residents what works, and we're creating the foundation to scale to much larger performance-linked investment rounds in the years ahead. And I think that that's how we move from isolated projects to a citywide network of green infrastructure, not only protecting property, but improving water quality and making Toronto a more climate resilient city.
Thank you, Darren, for walking us through the funding solutions for this. And now that we have that lined up, Sam, what does the next decade look like if we start moving now?
Thanks, Angela. And I couldn't agree more with what Darren's been saying. This element of it is really about sequencing, ownership, and measurement. And we really see 3 phases that will take place over the next decade. So first off, right now we're in the pilot stage. We're expanding existing green streets projects in Toronto's most flood-prone blocks. We're retrofitting several municipal buildings with green roofs and cisterns. And a newer element that we would be looking to implement is installing monitoring equipment to track exactly how much water is retained, where it's retained, and how these interventions perform relative to sustainability-linked bond targets. Early results will define design standards, cost assumptions, and practical approaches for larger scale deployment. And this phase is foundational because without it, a clear baseline is impossible without a clear baseline, it's impossible to measure success or optimize future investments. So next we move into phase 2, which is about scaling up. Retrofits will expand additional neighborhoods with lessons from phase 1 codified into Toronto's street and development manuals to standardize green infrastructure practice. We'll launch a stormwater fee with credits for private property owners who implement green infrastructure, creating a direct incentive for participation. Public-private partnerships will allow performance-based contracts to accelerate larger scale interventions in parks and corridors. We'll coordinate with provincial and federal funding programs and align green infrastructure investments with major municipal projects like transit expansions or roadway reconstructions. By systematically integrating green infrastructure into the urban fabric, we can reduce peak flows, improve water quality, and generate visible co-benefits like urban cooling and habitat creation. And so that phase 2 is going to look at around a 3-year timeline, depending on how the progress goes. And once we move through it, we'll look into phase 3. In this phase, we finally aim to mainstream these solutions. So green infrastructure will become a default for every road reconstruction and public realm project. Incentives for private property uptake, such as green roof grants and rain barrel rebates, will broaden participation. Data from the first 2 phases will allow us to calibrate future bond tranches, adjust stormwater fees if needed, and ensure the city is on track to meet performance targets. And by the end of this phase, Toronto will have institutionalized green infrastructure as a standard practice, creating a foundation for future larger financing tranches. Strong governance really underpins investor and public confidence as well here. So a green and sustainability committee with representatives from finance, engineering, and environmental departments will A, oversee project selection, B, ensure funding allocations meet eligibility criteria, and C, commission independent reviews at issuance and annually. Additionally, public dashboards, or what we would propose is that public dashboards will transparently report outcomes such as cubic meters of water retained, peak flow reductions, impervious surface retrofitted, water quality improvements, and return on investment estimates. Step-up provisions on sustainability-linked bonds will automatically trigger if targets are missed, and first loss capital from grants can be blended to manage risk and improve affordability.
Thank you, Sam, and thank you to our experts for taking the time today to walk us through how we can improve flood management here in Toronto. The advice for everyone seems clear. For the developers, bring forward GI first site plans and use the fee credits and target faster approvals. Insurers pilot premium credits in the treated catchments and co-invest in the performance-linked bonds tied to claims reduction. For municipal and provincial leaders, stand up the Resilience Fund, pre-approve a pipeline of projects, and publish the KPIs, and of course, start non-residential stormwater fees with GI credits. We know the risk, we know what works, and we have a fair and credible way to fund it. The only thing left is to start building and turn last year's floods into this year's resilience plan. Thank you for joining us. And now let's turn these insights into action and start building the solutions that our city needs.